Good morning, everyone. Captain Buford here, and it is a beautiful day in Denver. We are in our new 777-200ER, and we're going to fly down to Houston. We're going to do something a little interesting in this one, though. I'm going to show you how to use CPDLC, Controller Pilot Digital Link Communication. In other words, text messaging your favorite air traffic controller while you're in the cruise phase. There is a little program you have to download to enable PMDG planes to communicate over CPDLC with say intentions, which we're also using. I'm going to show you how to set that up and how we're going to do that. So let's do just that. So what we need is a little program called Bridge. I will put a link in the description, but it's easy to find. Just type in ACARS Bridge, and it will be the first hit on Google. Some gentleman named Dave Black in the UK, Dave, if you're watching, thanks, man, wrote a little program to enable your plane to communicate over the Hoppy network through the bridge to the Say Intentions network, and therefore interact with Say Intentions AI. And it's obviously a two-way communication. So what you have to do is go over here to Releases and download this zip, which contains one program called bridge.exe, and run that. It shows you here that you've got to register with Hoppy, and it gives you a number that then becomes your Hoppy ID. I'll put a link in the description for how to do that, or you can click this right here. You have to enter your Say Intentions API key so it knows how to talk to Say Intentions, and your SimBrief pilot ID so it has access to your active flight plan. You do that once. When you run the program, you're going to get this DOS window, I guess you call it, and you'll have to set all that stuff up the first time you run it, but after you run it, you won't have to do that again. On mine, you can see here's the one I've set up for this flight. It knows that I'm going to be United 1011. This is the 4-letter ID that you tell the plane. It takes the place of telling it to communicate to a particular control center. But you're not going to talk to a control center. You're going to tell it to talk to Bridge. And the way you tell it to talk to Bridge, and therefore Say Intentions, is by using this code, UDIS, which I think is a clever way of saying UDIS or use this. Anyway, it's an easier way to remember it. UDIS for use this. So I'll put that on my other screen. Anyway, you got to do that. So let's do our flight. We are going to be UAL 1011. No pun intended. We're at 777 actually. I hope you got that. We're flying from Denver to Houston, and you can select a B772 here if you want to. I've got it over here as a saved airframe. This one right here. And that is the real world flight plan, departing today on runway 25, arriving Houston on runway 8. However, I happen to know there's some weather in the area. So let's check the weather. Weather maps. I like to use Meteo Blue here because this is the same weather data source that the game uses. And so if you're using this, you're seeing exactly what you're going to run into, or hopefully not run into, in the game. And looking at this, you look closely here, the wind, this is the wind at the surface. It's all coming in and going this way. So air here is moving this way, air here is moving that way. Makes you wonder, where's that air going? Well, that air is going up. And air going up means storms, which you can see on the weather radar Here's the storms that are behind it. You can also look at wind at cruise altitude. And interestingly, you can see how the wind is diverging here. All this wind is coming this way, and some of it's going that way, and some of it's going that way. Makes you wonder what's happening here. Well, what's happening here at altitude is that air is coming up from ground level and forcing this jet stream apart. This is a recipe for severe storms. So that's what we see here. The little pluses are lightning strikes. And I'm not sure we really want to go through that. So what are they doing in the real world? Well, you take this route. This is actually the most popular route between Denver and Houston. And if you look at FlightAware, click that little FlightAware symbol, you can see that, 25 flights in the last day or two have chosen this route, right? Which is NOSO and Gusher. And that's what it gives you. It defaults to using the most popular. However, if you go down here, you can see that this morning at 10 a.m., only a couple hours ago, UAL 2676, 737-900 flew this route with this routing in his flight plan. So let's just copy him. Control C to copy that. And then you come over here and do Control V, delete those, and analyze the route. And it's valid. You can see he's flying like way down around here. And that's because he's flying around all this. So we will do that as well. That's all we need to do here. Generate flight, performs all the fuel calcs and some complicated math that I don't understand. And we'll store the flight plan and associated data in the cloud, and then the plane and state intentions and the Hoppy Bridge all now have access to it under my pilot ID, which anybody can use my data. You can follow along in the flight plan if you want to. I don't care. So that's it. We are all planned. So now we go back to the game. We hop in the plane. And let's start getting ready. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to put the iPad over here, and I'm going to stow that iPad. You can see that I've got these screens off. I do that to save frames. I know it's not super realistic, but kill me. Turn on the Adaroo. This is the Air Data Inertial Reference Unit. These are the laser gyros and air data computers. They have to boot up, and the laser gyros have to align, which takes a bit of time. No big deal. While it's doing that, we can go ahead and get the chocks removed. I'll release the jetway, which you should be able to see. There we go. It's retracting. Well, we'll set the parking brake, but in order to set the parking brake, I have to turn on the hydraulic system here. And we've got pressure, so we can set the brake. There we go. Parking brake set. Now, if you want to, you can release all the individual tugs and ground service vehicles if you want to, but there's a little cheat. If you just say remove chocks, it will go ahead and dispense with all the vehicles, close all the doors, etc. And you don't have to. So door management, I'm going to close all the doors. That door isn't closed yet. There it goes. It closed. And now arm them all. So now they're all armed. Meaning, arm means the slide will inflate if you open the door, which we want on the ground. For the flight bag, we'll request data from SimBrief. Pushing this button does several things. It'll import the flight plan. It will also bring in wind data and performance data, which we're going to get to in a little while when we program the FMC. So we are aligned. That's good. we have to enter our initial position in order for the inertial reference system to work. So we take that GPS position and we put it in the inertial reference system position. And now it knows where it is. It's using the GPS position as its starting point. You can also enter an airport and gate, and it has a database and it knows where those gates are in GPS, but it's easier to just use the GPS position. So it knows it's at Denver, which is always a good check. Make sure you're at the right airport. So now we want to enter the route. We will request the route, and we want the SimBrief active route. Pushing this tells it to download from the cloud from SimBrief our flight plan. That's what that does right there. We can set the payload, which saves us from having to go into the payload pages and tell it how many passengers there are. We can also set the fuel from the SimBrief flight plan instead of having to fill it up the old-fashioned way. So clear those two messages. We will select that route. It's requesting it. Now it's a good time to start going through our checklist. Oxygen works. We will set the altimeter in a minute, so let's wait there. We want to load that route. Denver to Houston, United 1011. Activate and execute. And now you can see the first leg of the flight plan. So what we've entered there is we have the route, which starts at Suds. So somehow we've got to get the plane to Suds from the airport, and that is the departure. Then there are some VORs, a couple of waypoints, and it drops us off at KIAH, which is the final waypoint going into Houston. And so an arrival will take us from KIAH to the airport, and then an arrival will take us to the runway. So let's do that. We're taking off on 2-5. Let's check the flight plan here. Taking off on 2-5, we want the Suds 1 to Suds. Suds 1, and there's no transition, so that goes to Suds. So you can see now how here's the runway to the point here, then we turn and head that way. So we execute that. This is saying you've made a change. I'm showing you the change in a dotted line. Do you want me to start using that new edited route? Which I do. That's what execute does. And now that turns magenta, and the old magenta goes away. Now on arrivals, index arrival to Houston, we're coming in on H-Town 3 via KIAH. H-Town 3 via KIAH. And I'm not going to enter an approach yet because I'm not sure what runway they're going to give us. I'll do that later. So we can see all the legs in the route. They're all good. Here's KIAH. Remember, it stopped there before, and now it continues on with the arrival and takes us to Weldon's. After that, an arrival, an arrival has to take us to the runway. So if you want to see what that looks like, we go to our arrival, star means arrival, and we did the H-Town. And you can see we came in through KIAH here. That's where we started. All those other transitions take you in from other places. And KIAH takes us in and drops us off at Weldon's, which is this one right here. And then control will tell us how to get to the airport. So what I normally do at this point is I tell it I want a map of the airport, because Denver International is about as big as the entire state of Rhode Island, and I don't want to get lost. So there's the airport, plus. We got to get down to 25 here, so I will leave it looking like that, so I'll be able to see it when I put it over here in the window. But you can see it kind of turns into a pointy, and you can put it there. Okay. So we still haven't set these yet. We got to set our altimeter. And I know you can select the B key if you want to, or you can set field elevation here. I'll do it using ATIS information just to show you how this works. Head to COM, ATC, flight information, ATIS request. For Denver, please. KDEN, you put it here and then click there and it goes there. We'll see if that SIM has one. They usually have better information. By the way, this part of the computer communication system you can use without all the hoppy and bridge stay in tension stuff. The next step, not true. So ATIS. Good, we did have enhanced information. Information Foxtrot 1553. Winds 350 at 10 miles, not much in the way of clouds. Here we go, altimeter 3018. So 3018. Setting takes a while. There we go, 3018. That's how you do it properly. Runway 35 left closed, taxiway Echo Charlie closed, between Papa and 35 left, bunch of closures, bird vicinity, advise you have Foxtrot. Departing runway 25 and 34 left, so we're good. You got a second page here, which won't be anything, it just rolled over. So you hit cancel, this will mark that message as red and clear the screen. So now we can tell the checklist that we have 353 magnetic there. We've got 353 there, so we're good. So the gyros and altimeter has been set, and we can check that off. Flight deck door closed, passenger signs. See, the way this works, if there's a box, you've got to check it. If there's no box, the computer is smart enough to talk to the buttons up here, and it knows that if I do that, now it's checked off. So MCP V2, we can't do this one. Okay. So now we have to set up the performance, our zero fuel weight. We can check that against the flight plan. 378.2. Now we can enter 378.2 here and then put it here, or we can just click this and it knows it's 378.2. So it knows 378.2 now. You got to tell them how many people are on board. It knows how much fuel is on board using the level sensors, and they can calculate gross weight, which it does automatically. Cruise level 390. We accept this. There we have it. Cruise 390. One of the things that gets uploaded to the plane when we click to retrieve data from SimBrief is all the performance numbers that we want. And so cost index, cruise altitude, cruise CG, etc. all gets entered for us, or you can enter them. So thrust limits, we have to go to performance and set our takeoff calc. So import the airport information, import the aircraft information, the weight, etc. Import the weather, and tell it we're going to use runway 25. And then calculate. says to use takeoff 2, flaps 5 with 33-degree D rate. So takeoff 2 with a 33-degree D rate. There we are. Now the engines have their own computer called a FADEC, Full Authority Digital Engine Control. So they know the temperature. And if they know the temperature, they know how much fuel they can inject without overheating the engine. So in actuality, 11 degrees is a nice cool day. So we can inject lots of fuel without overheating the turbine. However, in order to save wear and tear, by putting 33 here, we're telling the computer, don't inject the fuel for 11 degree air temperature. Inject the fuel for a 33 degree air temperature, which is going to be less fuel. By doing that, we'll have lower turbine temperatures, less thermal stress, and they'll last longer, and last longer translates to less expensive to maintain. So that's why they want you to do a D rate to save wear and tear on the engines when the plane is light and or has a really long runway to take off from. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. So takeoff data, flaps 5. We have recommended V speeds. We need to get our center of gravity. We come over here to our weight and balance and import the numbers. And we have a 29% of mean aerodynamic chord center of gravity value. That's the position of this little disc, a puck here. They call it a puck, takeoff puck. That's where we'll take off. That's where we'll land. That's where the CG is if there's no fuel. So 29 takeoff. So I can enter 29 into these two little boxes if I want to, or I can just click this. And it's 28.6, rounded up is 29. Tells me I use 3.75 degrees of trim, which means I need to add some nose down trim. There's 4, there's 3.75. We're good. Now it's what this 138 with a little greater than sign here means that I'm recommending 138. You can put in here whatever you want and put there, but if you just push the button, you're going to get 138. And our performance tool told us 38, 39, and 42. So 38, 39, and 42 agrees. If there's a discrepancy between what it says in the computer and our performance tool, you're supposed to use what's in the performance tool. But in this case, they agreed, fortunately. So we're good. Let's see, now we have the next checklist. This is V2 is 142. I'm supposed to set that here to remind me, or if the autopilot's on, to hold 142. That's in case of an engine problem or something. V1 is the speed after which you no longer have enough room to stop on the runway, which means you gotta fly. VR is when you start rotating, and V2 is the speed you want to be going, at least 142, because if you lose an engine, you need to be going 142 so that you can fly away on one engine. That's what V2 means. And so I want to, if I get to 142, I want to hold 142 in case you lose an engine and take off. So that's set. That's what it means here. Set V2 in the MCP. The heading, we're going to be heading initial 263. So in case I have to run on heading control, I want to have set 263 in here. So heading is set in the MCP. Well, altitude. This is our initial clearance altitude, but we don't have clearance yet. So now is where we start using CPDLC, which I'll show you here. Go to COM, and we want to log on to, remember, use this, so that it will talk to say intentions. I hit send. That will send the logon request. These usually come back pretty quickly. I don't know how long they take in the real world. ADC COM is established. Now you can cancel or exit. If you've ever wondered what these buttons are, these are CPDLC buttons. So you can push stuff down here. So if I read the message, you see cancel at grade. I can hit cancel here, or I can push cancel up here, and it does the same thing. So we've got the logon request. They haven't acknowledged it yet. But let's go ahead and get our departure clearance. We had information Foxtrot. We're using UDIS for the facility. And where are we? I always forget where we are. We're at gate Charlie 34. Charlie 34. And we want to request our departure clearance from Denver to Houston as filed. So we send that. We can exit here now and wait for our response. We got logon accepted. Cancel that. System going and get our fuel pumps running, get them circulating, get rid of all the bubbles while we wait. So this thing is configured. We can get the wind information. That's something we can do. We want to uplink winds. Now it says uplink. In the real plane, this actually downloads wind data from a satellite. In the game, unfortunately, when we selected or told it to get this information from SimBrief, remember on the iPad, it uploads some files to a directory, a weather directory in the PMDG folder. That's what this thing actually uses. So, regrettably, it's not super realistic since it's the winds when we filed. When we did the flight plan and hit the generate flight plan. Not real stuff, but close enough. Here's all of our waypoints. So if you want to see what the winds are at CNX VOR, we'll be at 390. So the wind's there. Temperature is -56. Winds at 258 at 61 knots. From out of the west, 61 knots. So the other one we want to do is our descent winds. Again, the same deal. In the real world, they get this when they arrive, when they get close to the airport. Fortunately, it's not going to be any different. So let's load that. Okay, we got request being processed. Please stand by. Okay. Oh, and there it is. Cleared to Houston. SUDS 1 departure. Maintain 9,000. Departure frequency 120.8, squawk 5576, and expect 25, which is what we had set up in the computer, so we're good. Let's set 5576, 5576, and we're on TA. Now, in this case, we have to accept or reject. That clearance looks good to me. So, a couple of ways we can do it. We can bring up the message down here and hit accept or reject. Or, without the information there, we can just hit accept up here and it will accept it. And cancel. So, we got our clearance, right? It was 9,000, not 10. So we set, oops, I want to do this first. I'll set to 1,000. Set that to 9. And now we can go back to our checklist. We got V2 entered in here. We've got our heading entered here. And we've got our initial clearance altitude entered here. So we're good, and we've had clearance. We set speeds, we set the pre-flight, we set the trim, we briefed ourselves, and we did, again, you see the beacon doesn't have one here. It doesn't have a check mark. That's because what you're supposed to do is go ahead and actually turn it on. And it knows that you turned it on. And before taxi means we're backed out and engines have been started. So go back to legs. We're good here. So we can kill the checklist, at least for now. We won't need to communicate with anybody. I'll bring up the same tensions tab here, because the first person we're going to talk to is going to be ground on 12135. You're supposed to be able to click on this and have it go. There it goes. So we dialed up ground and the radio. Oh, let me show you one little trick here. It's kind of useful for the engine start. You can, this is the inboard display control. So you can have it display the nav, the multifunction display, or the ICAS display. So if you set this on ICAS, you'll get what was the ICAS display here. Then you tell it left inboard engine, and you'll get the engine information. Then go back to control, and then when you slide it back over, the engine information will be here, so you can watch your startup. Just like, and apparently that works in the real plane too, or so I'm told. So we're ready to go. We're all closed up. We're on parking brake, not shocks. So it will select Shift P, and we'll get our pushback going. Release the parking brake. And the little truck is hooking up. I wish there were a better pushback solution, but I guess for $77, what do you want? Pushback? Come on. Come on, Robert, give us pushback, will you, for crying out loud? Waiting on push. And we're pushing. Let's get number one going. You can wait till the engine spools up, but there's a computer out there on that wing, and it'll just do it for me.
Captain Buford, the cabin is ready for departure.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, dear, very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard United Airlines Flight 1011 to Houston.
United 1011 Heavy, Denver ground, you're welcome.
Flight attendant. On behalf of Captain Buford,
Yeah, I pushed the wrong button, okay? Y'all can laugh at me now. Be sure to comment, oh, I don't know what button to push.
Our estimated flight time to Houston is approximately 2 hours and 13 minutes. Now,
and yes, the 777 has a big enough APU. You can start both at the same time. That's good enough.
To release, lift the upper portion of the buckle. In the event of a sudden cabin pressure
Set the parking brake.
oxygen masks will drop from the panel above you.
Wait for the engines to boot up.
You to start the flow of oxygen. Place it over your nose and mouth. Secure it with the elastic band and breathe normally. Secure your own mask first before assisting others. Your life vest is located under your seat. In case of a water landing, remove the vest.
And there's light off.
And fasten the straps around your waist. Inflate the vest by pulling down on the red tabs or manually blowing into the tubes. This Boeing 777-200ER is equipped with 8 emergency exits, 2 at the front, 4 over the wings, and 2 at the rear. Please take a moment to locate the nearest exit, keeping in mind that
Everybody's clear. I'll get the flaps going.
we are now ready.
Flaps 5.
Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. You're welcome, Captain Buford.
Taxi lights on. Leave the strobes off till we get to the runway. Fuel pumps are on. Everything's happy. Packs are still off. They're waiting for the engines to start. Let me turn off the CPU. We're done with that. And we're ready to go. Denver ground, United 1011 requesting taxi to runway 25. That was a Max come on, that noise.
United 1011 Heavy, taxi to runway 25 via Charlie Sierra Golf. Contact tower on 124.3 when ready for departure.
Roger, Denver ground, United 1011 Heavy, taxi via Charlie Sierra and Golf. We'll contact tower when ready. So they got me going Charlie Sierra out here to Golf, down Golf to runway 25. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Parking brake release. Here we go. Turn the flight director. Flight director's on. And we're rolling out. Charlie Sierra. So we're going out Charlie Sierra. Ground textures aren't the best here, not sure why. There's Golf. I saw that sign there. The next one's Fox. We want Golf. That's a little notice down here, cabin ready. That means our flight attendant has pushed a little button indicating that she's got the cabin ready to go. About 27 knot ground speed, usually decent. Without looking like we're being a hooligan. Flight directors are on. There's nobody there, so we can go ahead and get our lights on. Packs are running. Everything's good. Let's see where we are here. Now we're almost there. We should, this Golf taxiway will take us right to the runway. And no, I don't know what the hell is wrong with the ground textures. We'll see if the runway's any better. We're on Golf, there's taxiway Bravo, and this is the runway.
United 1011, heavy, contact tower on 124.3 so long.
Over the tower on 124.3, United 1011 heavy. Denver Tower, United 1011 heavy, holding short, runway 25, ready for departure.
United 1011 heavy, Denver Tower, runway 25, winds 345 at 10, RNAV, break 'em, cleared for takeoff.
United 1011 heavy, clear for takeoff. There's that RNAV break he was talking about, is this, so we're on the right RNAV. So we're on the runway. We've got a checklist incomplete. Let's see. We didn't do the checklist. That's probably why. Anti is good. Recall. Auto brake. Checked. Ground clip clear. For takeoff. Flaps 5. We're good. And the ground textures here are no better. I don't know why that's doing that. So we increase power, let the engine spool up. You want to go until this little tick mark is about pointing at that. When that's good, they're at speed. Increase the takeoff tick mark. So it's a little slower here up at altitude.
80 knots. V1. Rotate. V2. Positive rate of climb.
Select gear up. Autopilot to command. LNAV, VNAV. It's going to head to Brackham now.
United 1011 heavy, contact departure on 120.8.
Over to departure on 120.8, United 1011 heavy. Good day. Denver departure, United 1011 heavy with you at 7200.
United 1011 heavy, Denver departure, radar contact, cleared, direct break 'em.
Direct break 'em. United 1011 heavy. And we'll start bringing up the flaps. We're at the maneuvering speed for 1. We're going to 1. We're coming up on the maneuvering speed to flaps up. Selecting flaps up.
United 1011 heavy, climb and maintain flight level 250.
Climb and maintain flight level 250, United 1011 heavy. So we'll set our altitude. We're good to 250. Yeah, there's downtown Denver. Nice view, but we're about to turn away from it here. Go ahead and zoom out nav display a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Powered back. What's happening here is we're supposed to hit Breakham at 10,000. B means at or below. We're not there yet. So it's going to hold us at 10 until we pass Breakham, which we're about to do. And there we go. We passed Breakham. The next one, we're supposed to be at 10,000 at or above, so we can continue our climb. This right here, these three little boxes, that's called our FMA, Flight Mode Annunciator. Sort of tells us what the autopilot is doing. So we're in thrust ref, which means set climb to power. That's where it's set. We're in LNAV, which means follow the magenta line. VNAV speed means this is our pitch mode. This is our power mode. This is our lateral mode, left to right. This is our vertical. So this is what the autopilot is going to do with the elevator. This is what the autopilot is going to do with the ailerons. And this is what the autopilot is going to do with the throttle. VNAV speed means pitch up and down to hold this indicated airspeed.
United 1011 Heavy, climb and maintain flight level 280.
Climb and maintain flight level 280, United 1011 Heavy. It's going to roll the plane to keep us on the magenta line, and it's going to keep the power just set at something. In this case, the set at something is climb to power limit, and that's 95.56. It's climbing a little bit, and so it's going to keep the power at a set profile, and then climb as fast as it can, but hold at 294. Done with the after takeoff. Next one is descent, which we're not going to need for quite a while. Take a look at where we are. Where we are is climbing out of Denver, following a freeway, which you can see right here.
United 1011 Heavy, contact Denver Center on 126.5.
Over to Denver Center on 126.5. United 1011 Heavy. Good day. Now they want us to call center. Denver Center, United 1011 Heavy, with you at 17,000.
United 1011 Heavy, Denver Center. Good morning, Centennial, altimeter 30.18.
30.18 altimeter, United 1011 Heavy. We're coming up at 18,000, so at this point we switch to flight levels. We distinguish flight levels from altitudes because altitude is our height above sea level as accurately as we can measure by calibrating the altimeter to the current barometric pressure. Flight level means sort of a cheated altitude. We call it flight level just to distinguish the two. Flight level means I've set my altimeter to 29.92 inches of mercury, which is the overall average for Earth. The barometric pressure at sea level. By doing this, I know that if I'm at flight level 280 on standard and somebody else out there is at flight level 290 on standard, that we're going to be 1,000 feet apart. If we had altitude set, then I have no way of knowing what his altimeter was set for. He might be flying in from Houston. And there's our first bing bong. Now we're using CPDLC communication. We just got a command, climb and maintain flight level 360. So we're cleared to 360. I will accept that and cancel the message. That's what CPDLC does. Our messages from this point on are going to be digital, although when we change from one control zone to another, we'll probably get a request to check in with voice. Anyway, flight levels is just a way for me to make sure that if we're at different flight levels, we are going to be separated vertically. If we've all got our altimeters set for our departure airport, then who knows? That's why they do that above 18,000. Now we can check our progress page. We're expected in at Houston at 1904 Zulu. We're about 2 hours. I will edit this to keep it from being too boring. So, econ speed, what does that mean? Well, when we're climbing, which you can see on our VNav, I can tell it, look, I want you to be at a certain speed. Or I can have it calculate the most efficient speed to use. That's econ speed, and it's recommending 293 indicated, which is what it's holding. You can also see a slash 0.833. As we climb, the air gets thinner, and so at a given indicated airspeed, we're going to keep flying faster and faster and faster. So you watch this true airspeed is going to be climbing. It's at 427 now. The air is continuing to get thin. That's going to climb. Eventually, that speed is going to be so fast it starts approaching the speed of sound. And that's the problem. So when 293 corresponds to Mach 0.833 or 83.3% of the speed of sound, after that, it's going to start controlling on Mach number. So 293 until it's 833. Oh, we just got our clearance to 390. That's our cruising altitude, if you recall. We will accept that. Which we did. So right now we're at Mach 737, 738. That's going to keep climbing, and when it hits 833, this is going to switch to 833, and we're going to pitch up and down to hold 833 instead of holding 293 indicated. We look at our cruise. We're going to cruise at 390, and then there's a step climb at 1737. It's going to recommend that we climb to 410. As we burn off fuel, it's more efficient to fly higher. So, how does it know how we want to fly? Fast or slow? Well, the way it does that is through our cost index. Cost index is a calculated number given to you by your airline. It represents the cost to the variable cost to operate the airframe and crew, me, for 1 hour, divided by the cost of fuel in cents per pound. If the plane is very, very expensive to operate for an hour, you want to fly fast. But if you fly fast, you burn more fuel. If fuel is very expensive, you want to fly slow, burn as little fuel as possible. Cost index is the ratio, and if the cost index is in fact calculated by dollars per hour divided by cents per pound, then the overall flight will have a minimum cost when taking into account the hourly cost of the aircraft, crew, maintenance, 1,000-hour inspections, etc., and the cost of fuel burn. Sometimes airlines will set it based on kind of how they want the planes to fly. They want to slow them down. They may give you a cost index of 20. It also depends on how big the airplane is. A big airplane is going to be more expensive to operate per pound. It has more crew. Inspections that occur on a flight hour basis are going to be more expensive, etc. So decreasing this number will decrease your speed. Increase the number of hours the plane flies, but decrease the amount of fuel required to fly a given route. That's how the computer knows where I want it to make the trade-off between speed and fuel burn, is using this ratio and minimizing the overall cost of the flight. Part of that calculation is, when do I climb? If you climb, the air is colder. And if the air is colder, the Mach number is higher because the speed of sound is slower. So if you're going a certain speed, but the speed of sound is slower, you have a higher Mach number. Some people think the speed of sound depends on altitude and air pressure. It does not. Speed of sound depends only on air temperature. However, as you go up in the atmosphere, the air temperature gets colder. You see we're down to minus 24 TAT. So there are two temperature measurements that are relevant to flying an airplane. The first one is the simple air temperature, which you can find on progress page, I believe, second page, right here. Static air temperature. So if you're standing up here next to the aircraft as it flies by with a thermometer, that thermometer at this altitude would be reading minus 55 degrees centigrade. Total air temperature is higher because the air, as it runs into the nose of the aircraft, or actually as it runs into the total air temperature sensor, technically, but effectively it's the nose of the aircraft. As it hits the nose of the aircraft, it compresses. There's a nose there, and it's got to move out of the way. As it compresses, the air warms. As the air warms, when it is brought to a stop relative to the airframe, it's going to increase in temperature. That's what this number is. This is how hot the air gets when it runs into the nose of the aircraft and compresses. It goes up from minus 56 degrees in front of the airplane to minus 25 degrees C at the nose of the aircraft. This is also relevant to what the air temperature is going into the engines, so it's an important number to have. The combination of the two goes into the Mach number calculation. It's not either one or the other, although it's mostly static air temperature. So static air temperature is going down. You can see we've hit 8.3, so now we're holding 833 Mach, and whereas we were going 300 and something before, now we're slowing down in indicated airspeed. Our true airspeed is 476. It's also going to go down a little bit because the air gets colder. Again, it's a weird system for how the aircraft flies. It accelerates as it climbs, maintaining indicated airspeed. But once it's in Mach hold, as it continues to climb into colder air, then it slows down a little bit. And the fastest it's going is when it makes the transition. Increasing until the transition, and then decreasing after that. I know, it's weird. It's how they do it. People smarter than me have figured out that that's the best way to do it. But that's where you can look up static air temperature. And we're on time. So we should have 27,000 pounds of fuel when we get to Houston. we're still in climb because we're still climbing up to 39. We told air traffic control we want to cruise at 39,000. So that's what they gave us. And we're almost there. And as a matter of fact, we are there. It's slowing down now. You'll notice the FMA has changed. VNAV path is sort of like a lateral path that we follow, except it's in terms of vertical, up and down. So VNAV path means fly a certain altitude as a function of where you are along the ground. Now, when you're in a cruise, obviously, that path is horizontal, so it's a flat line. It's going to hold 39,000 because that's what the path says to do, and because we told it don't go above 39,000. So those two are the same. If I were to increase this number, it still wouldn't climb. It's still going to stay there because that's where the path is. The power mode has gone to speed, so now it's in effectively the same mode cruise control in your car. It's going to vary the throttle to hold the speed. In this case, the speed it's holding is Mach 0.834. As if we were to fly into hot air, then the speed of sound would be higher and the Mach number would be lower, and it would actually speed up. So this number, to some degree, is going to follow trends in air temperature. This cruise here just means that we're in the cruise mode of flight, and it's going to limit the thrust to the setting for cruise. So if I told it to climb, do a cruise climb, it's only going to go to cruise power in order to climb. If you want to see what those are, you can go down here to, where is it? I forget where it is, to be honest with you. These various things. So cruise N1 limit is 98.7 N1. That here's the tick mark, 98.7. But since we're in vary mode, and you're going to vary those engines and maintain the speed, it's only needing 0.861. But while that says cruise, the auto throttle is not going to take it above 98.7. I thought I could see those.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our cruising altitude. We will now begin our snack and drink service. Today we have a delightful selection including our famous chicken Caesar salad and a delicious
Where are we?
vegetarian pasta.
Yeah, we're
After
heading
the
southwest.
service, we will offer items from the United Airlines shop. Thank you for your attention.
So let's see when we're going to exit Denver Center. Give you a different map. So here's Denver Center. And when we cross this dotted line, we're going to go into a different center. Got to undo the lock. Looks like Albuquerque. So we cross this dotted line, usually a little bit after that. We're going to get told to contact Albuquerque Center Control. And they're going to have us until they cross over this line. And that's going to bring us into, I believe that's Houston Center. Doesn't say anywhere. Yeah, this whole region is Houston Center, so it's Denver Center, Albuquerque Center to Houston Center. And we're not going to cross the border, so we won't have to worry about Monterey. Lock it there. Should be more disciplined about this. Supposed to keep this heading bug set to what we're heading in case we have any trouble with the nav or we just want to keep going straight. I pushed the wrong button again. So here's our sensors. There's a captain side pitot tube. One of these is the icing sensor, the automatic de-ice, and the other one is the total air temperature sensor probe. This is the angle of attack vane, so as the wind is going this way versus higher angle of attack if you're going that way. And this little thing, this acts literally like a weather vane. It measures the angle of incidence of the wind. And we should have sitting here. I guess I don't remember which is which. This might be the total air temperature sensor. Gear doors. So, what is all this stuff? Well, these two are the climate control cooling air outlet. So if you were to go outside your house right now and look at your air conditioner, you'll see that spinning fan is drawing out the hot air. This air is heated as the energy is pumped out of your house, is pumped into air, and discharged out that fan in the outside unit. Well, these vanes here are where the hot air from the pack is discharged. So when it's an air conditioning mode, it's taking in air in the scoops here, which I'll show you. It goes through some heat exchangers and it exits here as warm air. People wonder how the air conditioner airplane works. And where it gets the cold air are these intake ducts here. So the air in the ground, or in the air actually, is cruising along here, goes into here, goes through some heat exchangers in the pack, and exits here. The analogous air in your house air conditioner is the outside unit where the air comes into that condenser coil, goes through a heat exchanger, which is the coil, and gets exhausted out that fan at the top. So how does that work inside the plane? Well, you can look at the synoptic page. Oh, contact Denver Center, please check in with voice. 132225. 132. This always takes forever. Denver Center, United 1011 Heavy with you at flight level 390.
United 1011 Heavy, Denver Center, good afternoon.
Alright, now it wants me to go back. 12. This must be a little St. Tensions bug. 128375. Denver Center, United 1011 Heavy with you at flight level 390. Well, this is not going to reply. So if we look at the synoptic page for the air system, what are we looking at here? So we need to supply the cabin with fresh air. People are breathing, people are burping and doing other things. So we need fresh air in and out. In order to get air in and out, it has to be compressed because it's too low a pressure to breathe. So we breathe compressed air. All right, everybody knows this. So we take air. A jet engine is a gigantic air compressor, followed by a burner, which burns fuel in the hot compressed air, makes it really hot compressed air, and then blows it out of turbine, which generates the compressed air and spins that gigantic fan at the front of the engine, which develops most of the thrust. So why on earth would we need an air compressor when we've already got two gigantic air compressors bolted to the wing? So what they do is they steal a little bit of the air from those compressors. They let it bleed out, which is why it's called bleed air. And it comes out, and so it's compressed and it's hot, because when you compress air, you heat it up. So this air coming out of the engine is both hot and compressed. In fact, out of the left engine, number one, it's about 51 psi. That's really high. The cabin is only 8.6 psi above the outside air, out there at this altitude. So we've got to do two things. We've got to let the pressure down so that we supply the cabin with pressurized air that's 8.6 pounds above where it's coming into the engine. And we got to cool it off because it's really hot. Now we need some heating, but I promise you we don't need as much heating as this air is hot. There's no temperature indicator, at least not that's visible to us. So we take that compressed air and we can use it to anti-ice the nacelle of the engine because it's so hot it'll easily melt ice. We can direct some of that hot air. Oh, here we go, Albuquerque, 1328. 328. We'll continue the lesson momentarily once I check in with Albuquerque Center. Albuquerque Center, United 1011 Heavy with you at flight level 390.
United 1011 Heavy, Albuquerque Center, good afternoon.
Or was I? Oh yeah. So it goes to the pack. What the pack does is the pack cools it off. So coming out of here, you've got two airstreams. One that's cold and one that's hot. So you blend those two together to maintain the overall temperature of the aircraft. Here is your cold, warm trim for the flight deck. If you look up here, that's all controlled by this. Well, let's say I'm a little warm. 74 degrees is kind of toasty. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. So what I've done there is I've turned it down to 72. This is my requested temperature. So what it's going to do is it's going to start blending more cold, less hot, and it will bring the cabin's flight deck's actual temperature, which is currently 74, down to 72. Oop, there's 1 degree already. Getting more comfortable. And there's another one over here that does the same thing for other zones. And the 777 is so huge, they've got multiple zones. Like the little bitty 737-600, it's got two, flight deck and cabin, like the whole cabin. The 777's got multiple, so A, B, C, D, E, and F, and aft and bulk cargo's got their own blend. So how does a pack work? I mean, is there a Freon compressor in there? No, there isn't. The amount of cooling duty would be it is so huge that there's no way you could do this with a Freon compressor. So the pack uses something called an air cycle machine. I'll try to explain. So the air comes in hot and high pressure, 51 pounds, which is quite a bit, from the engine. And let's say you're sitting on the ground at Houston, and you got to cool that down to 40 to 50 degrees, so you can blow cold air on the passengers. So how does it do that? Well, the air coming into the pack, and what I'm talking about is going to all be inside of this little bubble here, the green bubble. Comes in and goes through an air-to-air heat exchanger. And that is located under the aircraft. Remember I showed you before cold air coming in? Well, the first heat exchanger it goes through takes this air, which up here is cold, but down in Houston it's going to be 100 degrees. And it takes that hot bleed air and exchanges the heat with ambient air. And so it cools off the pressurized air. The first step is it cools the pressurized air to as close to ambient as they can get. Then what it does is it goes through a compressor and it bumps up the pressure even more to maybe about 100 pounds, roughly 100, 150 pounds, depending on conditions. So now you've compressed it 150 pounds, and guess what? It's hot again. So you pass it through another heat exchanger that is in parallel with the one I just told you about. So some of this air goes through the first exchanger, some of this air goes through the second exchanger, and cool it back off to ambient to about 100 degrees. So now you got air that's 100 to 150 psi and ambient, say 110 degrees. We still haven't got it cold. It's still hot. What you then do is you send it across a turbine, not a valve, a little turbine. By letting the pressure down and removing energy in the form of shaft work in the turbine, the temperature plummets down to about 50 degrees. You can't let it across a valve. If you let it across a valve, it will go in at 100 at pressure and come out at 100 with no pressure. You have to let it across the turbine. You have to remove that energy with the turbine. So what do you do with that energy, that turbine energy? Well, you use it to drive that little compressor I just told you about to bump the air from 50 to 100 in the first place. So you've got this little machine called the air cycle machine that on one end has got a compressor that's compressing some air, and on the other side it's got a turbine that lets warm air in one side, cold air out, cooler air, gas, whatever you want to call it, out the back, and the shaft from one spins the other one. Well, that's kind of how a turbocharger works, and in fact, it is just a big turbocharger with compressors and expanders that are tuned to the flow rates involved. Looks just like a turbocharger, and there's two of them, one in this pack and one in that one. So now I've got air that is 10 or 20 pounds and is cold and is perfect for putting into the cabin under pressure and blending with warm air to reach whatever temperature you want. There's a water separator after the expander. I didn't talk about that. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the general rule. And so when you get in a plane on a hot day and it's running on the APU and you kind of hear this machinery noise, all this noise, like what the hell is that? It's not airflow noise, it's the machinery noise. What you're hearing, especially if you're in coach like me, you're sitting above the wing, you're sitting above the two packs, and what you're hearing is the air cycle machine spinning, making hot air under pressure, or ambient temperature air under pressure, equal to become cold air at lower pressure. And that's what's supplying the air conditioning. So that's wonderful because you can remove a lot of energy with a small turbocharger like that. And there's no heat exchangers. The air itself just gets cold from the expansion across the turbine. No Freon compressor, no analogous evaporator like you have in your house. So that's how a pack works. And then of course it goes. If you look under, I don't know if it'll have the detail in this plane. Not really. Anyway, all that stuff is right here. The landing gear are here. All what's in here is that pack. Air coming in here, heat exchangers in this area here, outflow here, and air cycle machine is up right here. Anyway, that's how those work. If you look on a 737, there's a big, they call it a mixing manifold. It's nothing but a big drum. And the cold air from the pack goes into there. The blend air, this trim air, which is trim meaning trim the temperature to wherever you want it. The trim air comes into there, and then the regulated temperature air leaves there and goes to all the duct work and stuff. That thing where everything gets mixed, all the air gets mixed together, is called a mixing manifold, where it looks like it's a big oil drum. And if you want to know where it is, look on the bottom of the plane where they connect those big orange hoses from an external air conditioner, because they plug into the bottom of that big drum. And so they plug into the bottom of that mixing manifold. If you want to know where it is, look where they hook up that hose. 777 gets two hoses because they've got two packs and two mixing manifolds. 737 just has one mixing manifold with two packs. Anyway, that's how this works. The penalty, of course, is that this compressed air that was generated by the engine the engine relies on that compressed air to burn. And so if you steal some of it or let it bleed out, you don't have as much compressed air to do the whole burning turbine part, and therefore it costs you a little bit of power. And so when you're taking off, you look at the performance tool, you'll see here, where is it? Aircraft config, auto, off, AC config, auto. Off means I'm not going to take off with the packs running or the bleed air, or I'm going to take off with the APU supplying air to the packs. That gets you a little bit more performance because you're not sucking away that air. And so if you tell it, I'm going to take off with air conditioning off, you'll get a little more power. It takes that a little bit more power into account doing the takeoff calculations. Likewise with the anti-ice. Are you bleeding air for the engine anti-ice? Or are you bleeding air for the engine and wing anti-ice? Again, because if you are, you're robbing a little of that compressed air from the engine, therefore it develops a little bit less power. So that's why those are in there, and they're taken into account in the performance calculations. So we go synoptic pages. We got our electrical system. There are two generators on each engine. The main and the backup. And they can back up and cut in. You've also got external power over here. I'm sorry, there's one generator on each engine. This backup is the ram air turbine. It's a little spinning propeller that pops out to provide electrical and hydraulic power if both engines are lost. And that's what these are. This is the two backup generators are part of that turbine, and this is the plug-in power in the ground. And then here's the APU power. The APU power can power the whole plane. The ground power can power the plane. The little mini spinning propeller thing, the ram air turbine can power the plane, or the engines can power the plane. That's what's happening now. The engines are powering the aircraft, and the rest of this stuff is off. All these on standby. We got a pretty complicated hydraulic system. There's four main systems drawing from 3 reservoirs. So you got a shutoff valve, you've got an engine-driven hydraulic pump, and then what they call a demand backup pump. So this is a certain size, so it supplies a certain amount of hydraulic fluid, enough to run the flight controls and the reversers. But if you make large changes in the flight control, or when you engage the reversers, it's going to require more fluid than the system can supply, and so the demand pump will kick on and give you a little extra flow. But you don't have to supply that flow all the time, so this is an economy feature. Make enough to control the plane, and when you need more, a little motor will come on, driving a little bitty pump, and will supply you with more. That's what you see over here. So here's the main supply. In this case, this system is supplied by an electrically driven demand pump. So you can have it off, you can have it come on as required on demand, or you can turn it on, which I can do here. So I turn the thing on, and now you can see it's supplying additional flow. It's not necessary. It's just going to get let back into this reservoir after it makes a big circle. But you can see that it works by turning it on. You got two systems here. This system supplies the left reverse and flight controls on the one of the flight control systems, not the left side. Just one of the two flight controls. So we got another one here. This is electric only with an air-driven off. Remember that compressed air I told you about in the system? They have an air turbine that spins this one. The main is electrical. That supplies nose-wheel steering, alternate brakes. There's another electric one over here that supplies main gear, deployment and steering, flaps, and flight control. So you can't put the flaps down until this system is charged, or this system is charged with the isolation valve open. And then we got the right system, which looks just like the left, an engine-driven pump and an electric demand pump, and that supplies the secondary flight control system, the right engine reverser, and the normal braking system. Here's the alternate brake, here's the normal brakes. If you recall, when we started up the plane and I wanted to put on the parking brake, I had to turn on, I didn't want to turn on the engine, right? So I had to turn on the demand pump. So I put the demand pump in auto. It will look at the system and go, oh man, there's no pressure, I'm going to turn on. So it turns on in auto. That will pressurize this system, which supplies the normal brake control circuits, which is why I was able to put pressure on the brakes, engage the parking brake, and there was pressure to apply the brakes. Pretty simple. Well, not simple, but what do you understand? Fuel system, pretty straightforward. This is a short flight. There's no center tank fuel, so we're just feeding out of the left and right. 2 fuel pumps in each tank. You can cross-feed the systems. Total fuel. She shows them which pumps are on. They're all good. They all have pressure. We're not cross-feeding, and there's nothing in the center, and the pumps are off. Nice, simple fuel system of this thing. I've shown you the air system. Here's the APU as part of this thing. When the APU is off, this valve closes, and the systems are isolated. They're isolated because if there's a failure, like a line blows out or something, I don't want, obviously the left system's not going to work if there's a blowout here, but I don't want the right system to also blow out through there. So normally this valve is closed. If you lose here or something where there's a check valve, then the computer will automatically open this, and the right side will back up the left side, but it depends on the failure of the left side. This is all handled by the computer, allegedly. There's a door synoptic showing they're all closed. A means armed, which is good. So landing gear, we got pressure, PSI, and temperature. They're all cold, obviously. The nose gear doesn't have any brake temperature controls because they don't have any brakes. Here's our flight control logic. Showing all the zones. Again, this has ailerons and what they call flaperons. The flaps actually, flaps and ailerons will both sort of work in tandem to provide more flap and more aileron. It's a pretty complicated system that enables you to make turns with as little drag as possible. That's the idea. We have status. It's sort of a synoptic. APU is off. Oxygen. This is where you check your oxygen. And hydraulic quantities and pressures. We're all good. And the engine display, we saw that earlier. We have N2, which is the gas generator. So N1, the GE engines have what's called 2-spool. So there's a compressor. There's a fan in the front, which technically is a compressor. It's just a very low delta V compressor. That's N1, and that's driven by a turbine in the very back of the engine. And then the compressor that actually makes the super compressed air for the combustion, that's N2, and that's driven by its own set of turbine blades that are in the front of the turbine section, and sort of a spool within a spool, they call it. They look like a spool thread. So GE engines have two: the fan and what's called the gas generator, the high pressure compressor, high pressure turbine. Rolls-Royce engines, for whatever reason, it's sort of their claim to fame, and I don't know why it's better. I'm sure somebody with a British accent can explain to you why one is better than the other. But they have three. So they have an N1, that's the fan driven by the back turbine. They have an intermediate pressure compressor and turbine, and a high pressure compressor and turbine. What do they want? 133.65. 650, right? Yeah, 650. Albuquerque Center, United 1011 Heavy with you at flight level 390.
United 1011 Heavy, Albuquerque Center, good afternoon.
Something you may have noticed is that it said step climb to 410 now, but it's recommending 390. That should say 410. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Basically, when this recommends 410, it ought to give me the step climb. So the predicted step climb is not actually correct. So I'm just not a long flight. I'm just going to say a 390. I'm going to ignore that step climb, because according to this recommendation, optimal means fuel burn per mile in the air. Max is high as you can fly at this weight safely without, being pegged on throttle and angle of attack. And recommended is supposed to take into account overall performance and winds and everything else. And it's still recommending 390. So I don't know why it's recommending 390, but I'm being told to step to 410. That might be a little bug for Robert to take a look at. It shouldn't. I don't think it's supposed to do that. Any real pilots watching this can tell me if that's true or not. In any case, I'm going to stay at 390 because we're flying just fine here. Where are we? We got a ways to go. Okay, so again, 2 spools for the GE and Pratt & Whitney, and 3 on the Rolls-Royce engines. Again, it's their thing. So we're flowing 6,000 pounds per hour each engine. We've got good oil pressure, that's 47 psi. Oil temperature is 46, that's happy. There's still plenty of oil in the reservoir. And the vibration is fine. It's a little, I'm not sure what the 1.7 is, but the little arrow here is at the bottom of the band. So whatever the units of that 0.8 are, it's small. That's all I got to worry about. I lost my little trigger. There we go. The fuel's cooling off. The fuel's chilled off to -1 degree C as some -50-ish air blows across the outside of the fuel tanks, aka the wings. Zoom that out. Yeah, we're fine. What else can I talk about? So here's all the electrical controls. Again, most of this is all done automatically. So here's where you tell it to go on external power. Your backup generator, your main. You saw that on the Synoptic. So you can turn off the in-flight entertainment. We utility lights. So this is the power to the seats and IFE, and this is the utility power to the cabin. If you're having optical problem, you want to reduce the drain and load on the system, you can kill them here. Here's your fuel jettison. We know heat's automatic on this thing, which is nice. Here's the engine. This is the FADEX system. Engine controller, normal mode, start, and auto start, which we always use. What else? Here's hydraulic control. I explained all this. Here's the ram air turbine, which will drop automatically since it's lost the engines, or you could drop it here if you want to manually. So the fuel jettisons. And if you're on cross-feed, I believe the way this works is you turn on the cross-feed valve and turn off the pumps, and then it will pump that way. And then when you're done, you turn the pumps back on and close the cross-feed, and you're feeding. Well, the problem is you don't want to do that unless you're darn sure that the reason you have to cross-feed is that one engine is burning more or it was loaded wrong. Last thing you want to do is have a leak on one side and then cross-feed to it, because now your leak is on both sides, effectively. You don't want to do that. So here's the bleed air system from the engines, from the APU. Here's the isolation I talked about, on the left and right. So you can use these valves to effectively plumb around your bleed air and get bleed air to the trim into the pack. If you recall, here's the engine, here's the wing anti-ice, shown as here's where it comes off schematically. On the engine, it just stays inside the engine, so it's not shown. And it goes over to the packs and the trim air. Your circulation fans, they're primarily there for comfort. You're taking air from the cabin where it's going to go out, leave the plane, and recirculate it back to that mixing manifold. So the flow around in a circle is higher than the in and the out. There's a federal regulation for how many pounds of air per minute you have to supply per seat on the plane. And so the packs are set to flow a constant flow rate in, so that the fresh air is supplied at the federally mandated rate of, as a person, you get so many pounds per minute. Equipment cooling just sends cooling air to the equipment bay. Gas spurs, there's those little eye socket flow vents. You can send air to there. Got two recirculating fans. The pressurization system. So it's so automatic on this plane. It's kind of almost hard to explain. The packs supply a constant amount of air flow. Okay, regardless of how much pressure it takes to do that. Then so the constant airflow comes in from two packs, and then there's a certain pressure setting that the inside wants to maintain. Right now it's 6,700 feet equivalent pressure. So what it does is it opens or closes two outflow valves. So in engineering terms, it's a backflow control, what we call back pressure controller. So there's a valve that senses the pressure upstream of the valve. If the pressure is too high, it opens the valve. If the pressure is too low, it closes the valve. Right? That's the way a back pressure controller works. And that's what happens. So the flow rate is constant, and these valves at the back of the aircraft open and close to hold the pressure corresponding to 6,700. And then the computer computes, okay, I'm climbing or I'm descending, what rate of change do I want in this pressure? And then the valves will follow that pressure. So you can see landing 100 auto. So as the plane descends, the cabin is at 6,700. The airplane is at 39,000. Give or take, not correct, forgetting about the altimeter thing for a minute. Roughly 39,000 feet. So as this descends to 100, this 6,700 has to descend to 100. So this has to go a lot less feet than this does, which is why the cabin pressure will descend nice and slowly, not pop your ears too bad, whereas the plane is descending, might be descending very, very quickly. The ratio between this and 100 and 6700 and 100 is constant, and so that's how it decreases the cabin altitude. All handled by the computer. You don't have to worry about it, but that's what it's doing. It's going to decrease the cabin altitude. In other words, increase the air pressure inside the cabin, so that when this gets to 100, the cabin is also at 100, and you can open the doors when you get to the gate. Actually, you don't have to get to the gate. There's a sensor on the landing gear. It's called weight on wheels. There's a lot of things that are triggered by the plane being in the air or on the ground. And one of the things that's triggered by the plane being on the ground is there's an air valve that just opens up and releases all the air pressure that's inside the cabin when you touch down. And so as soon as you touch down, the cabin will equalize. You don't have to wait for this system to do it. The valve opening will do it automatically. Again, that's not shown on here. But in case of emergencies, I believe you have two valves, fore and aft, and you can put these on. You can put these on manual, and then you can open or close them. If you open them, the cabin pressure will decrease. If you close them, the cabin pressure will increase. And so you can effectively be the automatic controller if you want to, if there's a failure of the system. But there's two. So if one's acting flaky, you can just shut it off and run the other one, and it'll run the other one just fine. And you can see that, by the position of these valves. Notice how they're mostly closed in our normal operation. So if one system flakes out, and you shut this valve off, the other one can open up more and relieve the flow of two packs. So you can effectively have redundancy with the packs, redundancy on the supply side of the air, and you've got redundancy on the pressure control side of the system as well. So that's kind of nice. You can also decrease or increase the landing altitude. In older planes, they tried to do, you had to tell it, where am I going to land? What's the altitude going to be when I touch down? On this automated aircraft, the system is smart enough to know that we're landing at a 100 feet altitude, because it knows that the runways, well, you can't see it here, the runways in Intercontinental are 100 feet. And when I actually enter a runway, it may be a little bit different from 100 feet because of, elevation changes in the airport. Granted, in Houston, they're pretty minor. Houston varies about plus or minus 10 feet, the entire city. So it won't be much of a change, but it'll update this number with the actual landing altitude for touchdown. Or it uses sort of a Houston average at 100, which is fine. Again, I'm talking about 10 feet, 10 or 20 feet. So that's how that works. Let's see if we can find those outflow valves. So this. Model them or not. There's one. Yeah. There's one right here. That's one. Wrong button. Powered outflow valve, keep out when power is on. That's because there's about, right now there's 9 psi, 8 psi blasted out. These things open and close. You can see they're very throttled right now. But that's where all the air is coming out of the cabin. It's supplied by the packs, goes to the cabin, goes circulated in the cabin. People breathe, burp, whatever. That all leaves right here. And there should be one on the other side of the aircraft. Maybe there's a bottom second one. There's supposed to be another one somewhere. But that's it. Sorry about that. They might have cheaped out on the modeling of that one. There is another one somewhere. Unless those two are actually two valves. I thought there was another one on the other side of the plane. Anyway, that's how that works. We have no messages, which is good. Just set the heading bug. It's a really long flight when you don't get to fly direct. Maybe if there's a 777 mechanic watching this, you can tell me there's supposed to be another valve on the other side of the plane, outflow valve. Anyway, you can look at the CPDLC system. You can request oceanic clearance. Coming up on the pond. Pushback request. You can ask them when you expect to taxi. I guess that's if things are busy and they're being held at the gate. You can request a different flight level, different route, different speed. See, intention is doesn't really mess with your speed too much. So I don't know if I've ever gotten a speed request unless I'm coming down a star and I'm ignoring the speed and they want to complain to me that I'm going too fast. Maybe when they approve say intentions and it's actually managing other aircraft and trying to maintain separation and all that really cool stuff for the future, then they'll give you speed requests as they establish separation. What can we expect? You can just send them a message. Emergency report, position report. Yeah, I don't know. I've never used any of these things. This is where you enter your hobby code in the plane. When I talked about it, you got to get a hobby code and you got to tell the plane that this is where you put it. Review allows you to look at what you received and sent. To be honest, I'm not sure what the difference is, but flight information, again, you're sending messages to ATC or just ATC. So maybe this is when you're flying, it is running on the ground or something, I'm not sure. This all tends to be ground related. What else cool? So yeah, this is your lower, these are checklist, comm, and nav. Again, the next checklist is going to be the start of descent. It's going to be a while. So the functions, for those of you that don't know, so route is your overall route. Some flights, like in a little 737, like Houston to Dallas, they're real short. They don't actually have route. They're basically departure, SID, to arrival, star. And there's no intermediate waypoints. This is a much longer flight. And so your route is how you get from airport to airport. How you get from the airport to the start of the route. Think of the SID and the star as sort of surface streets. Like say, how am I going to get from Houston to Dallas? Well, I'm going to take 45, I-45. It's like, okay, that's my route. But in order to actually drive it, I've got to get from my house to 45. And then when I get to Dallas, I've got to get off 45 and take surface streets and get to my destination. Maybe I'm going to Cowboy Stadium or something. So So how you get from your house to the freeway is SID. And how you get off the freeway to your destination is the STAR. And then the final approach is, you're at the airport, how do I get to my actual landing runway? That's the approach, along with all the details of the approach. Oh, they want me to change again. 135.875. Albuquerque Center, United 1011 Heavy, with you at flight level 390.
United 1011 Heavy, Albuquerque Center, good afternoon.
Yeah. We could probably get an ATIS in. Let's get the ATIS in Houston. See, the nice thing, we're so far, we're never going to pick up the transmitter to dial up ATIS, but I can certainly ask the computer for ATIS. Let's see what we're dealing with in Houston. The PMDG ATIS is kind of abbreviated. It's got, like, you know, weather and clouds and barometer. If PMD, I guess if VATSIM is supporting the airport currently, then the ATIS from VATSIM is much more detailed. Runways is like this. See, this came from VATSIM. So information, David, thunder showers. Ooh. There's some thunderstorms in Houston. I'm actually in Houston right now, and there's no thunderstorms outside. Altimeter, yeah, that's low pressure. 28 warm, 22 dew point. Arrivals can expect 8 left, 8 right. Either the ILS or RNAV Y9. So ILS 8 left, ILS 8 right, or ILS or RNAV Y for 9. 3 simultaneous approaches in use. Not altogether surprising. They land all 3. So Houston's got 3 east-west runways. 8 left and right, and 9. You're coming into Houston. You like the 927 because that brings you in real close to the terminal. The runway, it's a pain in the butt. From the 8 direction is 8 left because that's the new runway that's way on the north side of the field. You land on that, especially in the 27 direction or the 26 direction. It takes you out freaking halfway to the Woodlands. It takes you forever to taxi back. So hopefully they'll give us the middle runway or the south runway. So departing 15 left and right. There's also 2 sort of diagonal runways that are pretty close together, so they can't do simultaneous bad weather approaches. But the prevailing wind out of Houston is from the southeast, and so 95% of the days in Houston, if not more, they take off into the wind on 15 left to right, 15 left being the slightly longer one. And we got United Ramp Control. In fact, I don't know what that is. I guess that means United manages its own ramp. Taxi with transponder on, and we have information. Delta. So we're landing to the east. That's good, because we're coming in from the west, and I don't want to have to circle around the other side of the airport. Hopefully they'll give us. Hopefully they give us 8 right. I've never actually tried to complain to say intentions and ask for a different runway. Maybe if they give me the wrong one, I'll ask them to see what happens. I like messing with say intentions to see how good the AI is. Landing to the east. That's good. Come in here in that way. So So I know it's cheating, but I'm going to look up on my cell phone what the weather's doing in Houston. I happen to be sitting here. Yeah, there's thunderstorms in the area. Right now, there's none over the field, but we could potentially be landing in the rain. The big nasty front is still up over Dallas, but we're getting some pop-ups in Houston. I'll just go ahead and cheat here. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. The airport is right about, well, there it is right there, Georgia Bush Intercontinental. That's a lightning hit. The airport's getting rocked a little bit. Hopefully this crap moves east, and hopefully this stays north. We can avoid all this. Not that it matters. I like ILS landings. It's always a challenge. I'll just put it on auto lane. This is communications, high frequency communications. This is your radar settings. Again, the game is pretty limited with what it can do in radar. You've got a standby FMC, which I don't believe is supported in the game. Remember that the 777 is different from the 730. 737's got old school navigation radios. You got to go down here and twiddle with the knobs or push buttons. The FMC controls nav. Here's where you set nav radios. So you got dual ADFs, dual nav radios, and then a third ILS radio. And when I program in the runway, it will automatically look up the ILS frequency and set it here. And this is the ILS radio that will drive the bars. Nav radio on this thing doesn't do a whole lot. What it's mainly used for is correcting the inertial navigation system. So if GPS fails, it will look up various navigation fixes and use those to correct the inertial nav system. It's still there. This is something that INS systems had automated before high accuracy GPS. I don't know if it's even useful anymore anyway, but according to this, we're off the 304 radial off DLF VOR at 114.4. I don't even know where that is. Maybe I can find it. That's FST. Okay. Laughlin. There's a DLF. It's 114.4. And it says we're on the 304 radial, which I guess kind of makes sense. I mean, that's about 304 from DLF. Again, it's using a local VOR to get its bearing. I don't think there's any more here. Down here by the Mexican border, VORs are few and far between. They're getting fewer and farther between as they kind of all go away. So here's one at Rock Springs. There. Junction's a pretty big one. That's a high power VOR. So if I look at Junction, that's a 116 nothing. So tell that, I don't want to let me do that. Yeah, 116.0 junction. .260. Okay, so that makes sense. Oops. Here's where we are. Here's junction. West is like this direction. So yeah, we're a little bit south of west for junction. And it's telling us we're on the 259. So I don't know how to get it to go back to... Can I do that? Will that work? No. Put that back. I don't know how to get it to go back to automatic. If I do that. No. Maybe somebody can tell me. Oh, that's how you do it. Okay. Nope. You got an email. You've got mail. Houston Center. Did we just pass it? Yes, we did. Okay, so here's Albuquerque Center. We just passed that line. So now we go to Houston Center. All right, that makes sense. Accept that. That's at 12575. I need a new mouse. Houston Center, United 1011 Heavy, with you level, flight level 390.
United 1011 Heavy, Houston Center, good afternoon.
Check out Houston. Houston, oh, they still have that bug. Robert, come on, get on the ball, will you? That bug has been there forever. Supposed to just get in my airport. So, here's what I was talking about, right? You got 826, 826. Particularly if you come in this way and you roll out to the west, it is really long, especially if you're going down here to Terminal E. As a United 777, we're probably going to Terminal E. This is the international terminals over here, so, you know, KDEN, Lufthansa, Emirates, all those guys. This, and this are all United. This one's under construction. It's a huge pain in the butt. I was just there. And then this is Terminal A, so this wing and those are for the Houston domestic stragglers. So non-United, American, Delta, Southwest, the Wish.com airlines like Spirit and all that, they're all here in A. United's heavy iron tends to come into either this C, or this is one of the Terminal C wings, or Terminal E, which is the newer. 9 times out of 10. If you're coming internationally, you're going to come into E, and then immigration and passport and control and bag claims here. Yeah, so we'll assume we're going to go into E. So hopefully they'll let me come in on 8 right, and I'll make a quick loop around here, or if worse, I'll take 9. 9, this one's nice if you're coming in from the east, you know what I mean? Here and hop, boom, you're there. So, come in here, I'll probably make Sierra Hotel, and get off and come back. But actually, 8 right would be the good one to have. So these are huge cargo ramps over here. FedEx is in this area here. It's going to be cargo. I think FedEx and UPS are here. This is, you know, custom cargo, heavy oil going out, stuff like that. And then here's the 2 launching runways. So they 15 left being a little bit longer, 15 right. Shows you where to go. So I'm going to pick an E gate. Yeah, so the big boys, big heavy iron, the heavy iron usually on the end here. So I'll probably ask for terminal E when I get on the ground. I'll try to get like a, you know, E19 or something. Yeah, so the 777 doesn't have a trim wheel. It's got, I shouldn't say trim, I should say horizontal stabilizer. You only have your power trim here. And this gets set dynamically so that, you know, if you're trying to fly with some elevator, it'll trim that out automatically so that there's, essentially it's using the whole horizontal stabilizer to pitch the plane at a slow changes in pitch requirement, elevator being much quicker. And it doesn't necessarily run fixed. So I don't know if you noticed when I was taking off, there was a fly-by-wire speed printed here. What that means is, you know, you trim for speed. So there's aircraft are designed to be stable, or vertically stable. What that means is, if you set the trim at some position, the aircraft will fly itself to maintain a certain airspeed. All planes are designed to do that. So you're descending into an airport. Let's say you're in a Cherokee or something, and you've got the plane trimmed at 120 knots. You can apply no pressure to the yoke. You just pull the power back, and the plane will settle into a descent at 120 knots. There's only one plane in the entire game that I know of that will actually do that, and that's the A2A Cherokee command change up. That one is stable in pitch. Every other plane in the game is not stable in pitch. You should not have used the autopilot. You can set it up to be stable. And that's what they're doing here. They're telling you, for a given pitch setting and a given center of gravity, given airspeed, it will report on the speed tape what is the stable speed that it will try to hold. That's how the 777 works. It's only via the buttons. And right now we took off, what was it, 4 or 3.75 or something, and now it's down to 3.25. Natural that as the plane speeds up, you need less, you need more nose down trim. They have the 3-letter code. I don't remember the name. Laughlin. Del Rio. Laughlin. So, we're still 23 nautical miles from Laughlin. And we got a intersection waypoint. 3 rivers. So T chat says Three Rivers. Let me get some of these names. Another waypoint. As we turn around that storm, we'll go very near the Victoria line. That waypoint. And to IAH. Again, this ends at IAH because we haven't given an arrival. Excuse me, we've given it an arrival, we haven't given it an approach. Air traffic control should tell me. It looks so nice out there. It's hard to believe we're going to fly into a storm. Are you kidding me? Oops. Okay, for those of you that were watching, there, I finally turned off my landing lights. Good looking plane. Finally start turning toward Houston. So obviously Houston Center will be the last one we talk to. Talk about cruise speed for a minute. So cruise altitude is 390. Again, still recommending 390. No, I didn't do that step, and I regret it because I never went to 410, so I don't know why I told me to step to 410. Econ speed 809. What is it? Why isn't it just speed? Well, econ speed means that this speed is determined by the cost index calculation. I mean, it's the speed for the best overall economy. Economy being not miles per gallon, but total dollars spent to do the trip. In terms of, pilots are paid by flight hour, flight attendants are paid by flight hour. If you didn't know, when you're sitting on the ground and the flight attendants are standing around and they're leading you into the cabin and they're telling you where you can sit and they're kicking out the drunks and winding up on YouTube, they're not getting paid. They're paid when the plane is in flight block time. So when the plane's not moving, they're not getting paid. So same with the pilots. Now, the rate they get is a lot, so it makes up for the fact that they're sometimes not getting paid. But they're not getting paid. So they want to get here just as bad as you do. As a result, there are several things that depend on flight time. The pay of every employee on board, as well as all of the costs, the things that cost money that are related to flight time. Like 100 hours, you got to do something. Every 1,000 hours, you got to do a check of some maintenance thing. A lot of things go by flight hours. Some go by time, like annual maintenance. A lot of them go by flight hours. So you add those things up, and you can actually drill down to a number of dollars that it costs to be moving that aircraft when it's moving. And that's what you optimize those dollars against fuel burn. Because obviously most of the time is when you're flying. On a route like this is made to go long distances. So you're on the ground for an hour and you're here for 10 or 12. So. And that's what you're optimizing. But there's other options. I could just set a speed. Let's say I want to go 8.1. Well, I just set 8.1. I'm getting 8-1 here. Now, it wasn't much of a change, and I did that intentionally, so it's not going to, like, you know, do anything crazy with the engines. But I can just tell it to do something else. I could also tell it 251, and it's smart enough to know that when I type in 251, it knows I don't want to go 251 times speed of sound, and I'm actually meant indicated airspeed. So I can put it here at 251, and it will fly indicated airspeed 251. See? So I can go back. What was it for? 8-1? Okay, hang on. I gotta pay attention here. Let's see. Message. Expect the H-Town 3 arrival. Descend in 20 minutes. Let me know if you prefer. This is a little bug here. When it says AM039, that's an apostrophe. So you read that as you'd prefer an earlier descent. So that's the arrival that I picked, right? H-Town 3 arrival. Yeah, okay, so we can accept that. Runway doesn't matter too much at this point. So anyway, back to the VNAV. So I've selected 810. I can go back to econ and go back to the speed that is recommended by the cost index optimization. Do that, drops back to 808. So there's some other cool things. LRC stands for long range cruise. It's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of an outdated, I don't know if I can explain it right. There is a speed that will result in the absolute bare minimum fuel burn. On a car, that means go 5 miles an hour. Unfortunately, in a plane, you actually, to go real fast burns more fuel, but to go slow burns more fuel too, because the wing still has to support the aircraft. So the wing supports the aircraft, takes more drag to go slow, so there's actually a best economy speed. Will minimize fuel burn. Long range cruise, I believe it's like, it's a 1% more speed than that minimum. It's meant to be sort of a non-calculated compromise between bare minimum fuel burn and fast speed, so or the economy speed. I don't know how much pilots actually use LRC. I know that if you want to have minimum bare minimum fuel burn, then just set the cost index to 0. And what you're essentially saying is that, you know, in order for that formula to be 0, the labor rate is 0. And I hope the unions don't shoot me. Or the fuel is infinitely expensive, and so that results in a 0 calculation for the cost index. So if you want to maximum extend range, then go back here to performance and set the cost index to 0. And then when you do that, you come back here to VNAV. The econ speed will be the speed at which your overall fuel burn is absolutely minimized, or same thing, obviously your range is maximized. So you can do that. Then there's RTA progress. RTA. RTA mode is required time of arrival. So if you have it's not, in short flights, it kind of doesn't work too well because, you know, you're going to find a certain range of speed and you're going to get to your destination whenever you get there. But for long flights, you know, if you're out in the Pacific Ocean, but you want to get to Houston, you know, at a specific time, or to a waypoint at a specific time, you can do that with required time of arrival. So let's say I go to my legs. Let's just pick one. Let's say Weldon's, which is the exit of the arrival. WDLNS. So I go to VNAV and I tell it WDLNS. Okay. So right now it's saying I'm going to be at 7,000 because it knows I'm on the arrival and I'm descending. And it's estimating that I'll be there at 1857.1. So that's about a half hour, given where we are. It's about right. So let's say I need it to be, I'm getting delayed, there's weather in Houston. Let's see if it can do an 1850 arrival. It might not be able to without exceeding some limitation, but hit execute. Oh. That's earlier. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. That's earlier. And so what it's done is it's gone to faster. So enable RTA. So basically it can't go fast enough to make it there that early. So let's say I want to slow down. Go back to VNAV, go to economy. So we'll slow back down. Throttles come back. Let's say the spelling, right? Yeah. Let's say they want me to be there at 1900. I was going to say 1860. 1900. Okay. So the RTA speed is 833. Seems not right. Not right side. 7. No progress. So WDLS. Oh, it says I'm going to get there at 1857 right now. Let me go back a little bit. What if I can't quite do that. No, it doesn't seem to be working right. Because right now it's anticipating 1857. So if I tell it 1900, it ought to slow me down. If I say like 1910. Unable. 1900. The problem is it's so close. You can't do much. Unable RTA. Now it's not working. This could be a bug. You're supposed to be able to take a fix that's on your route, set a required time of arrival. It'll calculate a different speed to get you there at that time. It's not working. Oh well, no bug. Or I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, those are the different forms of speed. You can set a time arrival. I know it works on the other planes. The FedEx, the freighter works. On a long route, you can delay your arrival by a half hour by simply slowing down and wait earlier in your flight. Maybe it's because we only got 65 miles to go. Those are the LRC speed, cost index speed, economy speed, which you can set the cost index to 0. This is how you get max range. Or you can have it calculate to arrive at a certain time. Maybe. We were coming up on THX, which was what? Three Rivers. this. Well, now we're 10 miles visibility, still Foxtrot. 10 mile rain. It's fine. RA is okay. That means rain. I'm okay with rain. Getting a little cloudier. Starting to turn at Three Rivers. Three Rivers, there's Corpus Christi. Wow, we really flew way out of our way on this one. Say you're supposed to fly with this blank because if you get ACARS messages and troubleshooting, it'll pop up here. So you want this off so it can pop up there. So I'll try to be a good pilot and leave that blank when I'm not using it. I don't remember when we were looking at the weather. We're in that jet now. 122 knot tailwind. That may be why it kept us down. That may actually diminish if we were to go up to 41. So, okay, so it's telling us we got to reset MCP altitude because we're coming up on the calculated top of descent. So we can call control here and see if we can get the okay to descend. Houston Center, United 1011 Heavy, ready to descend.
United 1011 Heavy, descend via H-Town 3 into Houston.
Roger, United 1011 Heavy will descend via H-Town 3. Arrival. Okay, so they told us to just follow the restrictions in the arrival profile, so it'll be above 230, it'd be above 14, and so on. So that means go on down at your discretion. So I'll tell it to go down to 9. And if they give me additional restrictions on down, I'll just adjust this. So I set that to 9. I tell it, okay, you can go to 9, whatever the path says to point the nose down. And this TD here means that we're supposed to stay level until there. And at that point, that path that's referred to here is going to start going down. When it does that, speed will come down to, it will say idle and then hold, which means it'll pull the throttles back and then release them, so I can add power if I want to. And the VNAV path, it's either going to go into, stay in VNAV path, or it's going to go into VNAV speed. I'm not sure. Idle, okay. So throttles are coming back. And when they get down to idle, which should be down here, I love how it decreases very nice and slowly. Keep the passengers comfy.
And started our approach to Houston. Please return to your seats, stow your tables, and fasten your seatbelts. The use of lavatories is not prohibited. Thank you.
Okay. And hold means it's going to release them and then they'll just stay there by themselves. So it's a stated path. What that means is it's going to fly a certain vertical profile to hit these constraints as you go down. Oh, I forget how to do this. There's a way you can have it show the profile. And I just, being a numbskull, I don't know what it is. Weather. Leave the weather up and watch it. Okay, so here's we're going to watch it a little bit. So with the wind data entered and the locations fixed in space, it knows all that. It's computed a path which is descending at 2,600 feet per minute, going down in space. So at a certain location, that path is going to have a certain height above the ground, etc. And if the winds are correct and it does the math correctly, the plane ought to maintain 284 with the power off, or at idle here. If there's error in the wind or errors in the calculation, the speed is going to drift. If it drifts up by more than, like, I think 5 or 10 knots, I'm going to get a drag required notice down here. And that's when I have to start doing that. If it gets too low, this will come off of hold and go into speed, and it will apply some throttle to get the speed back to there. That's simply to accommodate errors. So as you can see, we're doing 288, its target's 284. We're perfectly on the profile relative to the ground, not relative to air, relative to the ground. And so we're about 4 knots off. So that's pretty good as we come down. Contact center on 135.05. Houston Center, United 1011 Heavy, descending through flight level 300.
United 1011 Heavy, Houston Center, good afternoon.
Getting a little hot. We haven't got a drag warning yet, but it's okay. They didn't give me a speed restriction. We're nowhere near the limit of the plane, so it can drift. The only restriction we have is that at Jeep, we've got to be at flight level 230 or above. wind cheap here. We'll probably be below 310 already, so the wind's coming down. Again, the computer should know the wind at each of these points, as well as in the vicinity of Houston. And it's supposed to take all that into account along with the aerodynamic performance of the aircraft.
United 1011 Heavy, center, speed 250 knots.
Oh, speed 250, okay. 250 knots, United 1011 Heavy. So now I have to intervene. So I'm going to bring up the speed
United
window.
1011 Heavy, maintain 250 knots.
United 1011 Heavy will slow to 250 knots. So I've set 250, and what you can see is it's done. It's gone to VNAV speed mode in order to slow down, but now we're above the profile by 700 feet. So I'm just going to kind of see what it does on its own. Our next restriction is, all our restrictions here are at or above. So if we blow through high, no big deal. Descent started, CPDLC service terminated. Okay, that will be the last text message then. So, that's what CPDLC does. You still wind up talking to them a little bit, but in the cruise portion of the flight, you don't have to. So we're a little high on profile. I'll add drag if I have to as we get closer. The FMA mode, you can see, is hold at low idle. Hold 250 knots, in this case, by pitching speed. VNAV speed means that the autopilot has decided, so VNAV is still engaged, the autopilot is still directing our flight. But instead of pitching to maintain a flight path, it's going to pitch to maintain 250 knots. This time, the 250 is going to get met, because that's the objective, and what's going to drift is our position relative to the flight path. So that little slowdown costs us 2,000 feet of error in the flight path. I'll just go ahead and keep that. I can always shed that at any point in time by adding speed brake. As we get down to a different part here, I'll be able to I might be able to utilize it later. I don't want to dump that energy until I have to. Houston Center, United 1011 Heavy. Can we get an expectation for which runway we'll be landing on?
United 1011 Heavy, expect the ILS approach to runway 8 right at Houston.
Houston Center, United 1011 Heavy, thank you. We will expect the ILS approach to runway 8 right. Okay, so when I give us 8 right, I had to ask for it. That's okay. They would have given it to us eventually. So 8 right, it's time to enter this. We want 8 right. So now look at our latest page. Weldon's, and then Elpo. So I'll get rid of that discontinuity. And see what it looks like. Well, there we go. Coming this way. Landed at Weldon's. I'll make a beeline for Elpo, and then unless he gives me vectors, of course. So. Let me pull up ATIS. Now's the time I ought to have the current ATIS. Especially since we're coming up at 18,000. It's going to be 29 something, so start moving this down. Target is 9,000 for H-Town, and according to our current descent rate on speed, we're going to hit 9,000 beyond H-Town. So I'm going to have to dump some energy if I don't. Doesn't change here. Okay, altimeter 2985. Oh, that's close. I guessed 84. Niner 85 rain. Yeah, whatever. For Song Foxtrot. Okay. Probably set the minimums here. So we'll go to charts. We'll look at the approach. Let's see, right. We have plenty of visibility.
United 1011 Heavy, contact Houston approach on 119.7.
United 1011 Heavy, over to approach. Good day. Houston approach. United 1011 Heavy, with you at 15,000. 295 decision altitude.
United 1011 Heavy, Houston approach. Good afternoon. Houston altimeter 29.85. Expect the ILS runway 8 right approach into Houston.
Roger. United 1011 Heavy, altimeter 2985. We'll expect ILS approach to 8 right. So that's 295 decision altitude. So that's Barrow, select here. $295, okay. And we're still high. All right, we're gonna have to drop some. So remember, it's gonna hold 250. So as I add drag, it's gonna increase the rate of descent. I want to do that until the banana is there. We'll keep going to 7,000 Weldon's. So as long as that Weldon's 7 is okay. We're okay. So I'm going to adjust the speed brakes until the banana, that yellow arc, that's where we'll hit 7,000 at the current rate of descent. So as long as it's 7,000 before Weldon's, we'll be at 7,000 at Weldon's. So we're good. Go back to the airport map.
United 1011 Heavy, descend and maintain 4,000. Turn right heading 09 0 vectors for the ILS runway 8 right approach.
Roger. United 1011 Heavy will descend and maintain 4,000 and turn right to 090 vectors for the ILS 8 right approach. Okay, they want us in 090. Down to 4.
Captain, cabin is ready.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for landing in Houston, please ensure your electronic devices are turned off and stowed away. Kindly put your tray
Gate
tables
was I'm
away,
gonna ask for again?
turn your seats to their full upright position, and fasten your seatbelts. Upon arrival, United Airlines staff will provide information regarding your connecting flights. Crew,
Take
ensure everyone is
E19.
seated and seatbelts are fastened. You're welcome, Captain Buford.
United 1011 Heavy, proceed direct ELPO. Descend and maintain 3,000 until established on the localizer. Cleared for the ILS runway 8 right approach. Sidestep to runway 8 left.
Ooh. United 1011 Heavy will proceed direct ELPO. Descend and maintain 3,000 until established on the localizer. Cleared for the 8 right approach. Sidestep to runway 8 left. I'm not sure what that means. Does he? I can if I want to, or does he want me to? I've never got that before. Cabin ready. Okay. Alright, let's get down to 3. Switch to 3. Direct ELPO. So I took ELPO and I put it at the top. That will change my route to take me direct to ELPO. And I put it on LNAV so it follows the magenta line to ELPO at 3,000. Level change just locks in 250, so it's not going to do anything fancy. It's just going to go down to 3, then level out. We'll start slowing down. Weather still looks okay. I guess once I'm established in the localizer, I'll report that. And then I'll see what he tells me to do. If tower clears me to land, then 8 right. Why would you clear me to 8 right and then tell me to sidestep to 8 left? You don't do that until I'm near the airport. Here's the ELPO. Give me a nice 45-degree intercept, so I'm arm approach mode. So that glide slope are armed, which means it's going to stay on LNAV until it hits the localizer. Still the speed brakes. Suppose I should go through the checklist. Recall notes. I'm going to do auto brake 3. I'm not going to run the check. Init ref, we'll do a 30 flaps approach. VREF at 130. Set, approach briefing complete. I'll just do auto brakes 3, and if I need to add more, I'll add more. That's usually what I do. Altimeter set checked. Landing checklist is next. Okay, we're coming up on leveling off at 3 before Alpo, which is good. It should increase speed to 240. That's Highway 290 near Cypress. So that's Highway 290. And I believe we're, oh, that's 1960. That's FM 1960. And we're just passing over Highway 290, so the airport's right over there. Let's slow down some more. Because when it's adding power, that's a good time to slow down or go down if you need to. I'm going to go all the way to 210. I always like to come dragging it a little slow. It's a lot easier to add speed with those gigantic engines than it is to lose speed. There's the diamond, so we've got the localizer and glide slope. We're picking it up on the radio. There's no rain around, which is nice to see. At least in the game. It might actually be raining. So that rain up here is probably that over there. Not going to complain now. It's a nice day. I'm going to do an auto land because I'm used to landing in VR.
United 1011 Heavy, contact Houston Tower on 120.725.
1011, United 1011 Heavy, over to Tower on 120.725. Good day. Houston Tower, United 1011 Heavy, established on the localizer, 8 right.
United 1011 Heavy, Houston Tower, roger, continue approach.
Okay, so they told me to continue. It's getting a little late to sidestep. Let's start.
United 1011 Heavy, Houston Tower, winds 190 at 11, gusting 21, runway 8 right, cleared to land, caution bird activity.
United 1011 Heavy, roger. Winds 190 at 11, gusting 21, 8 right, clear to land. You're down. Okay, we're on the localizer glide slope. I don't know why we're not slowing down. Land 3. So gear down, speed brakes armed, auto brakes set, flaps, final flaps. That's it left way over there. I don't do that.
300. Approaching minimums. 200. Minimums. 60. 50. 40.
Nice,
30.
it's birds.
20. 10.
Throw the speed.
United 1011 Heavy, welcome to Houston. Contact ground on 121.7.
United 1011 Heavy, over to ground. Thank you. Houston ground, United 1011 Heavy on 8 right. Requesting taxi to Terminal Echo, gate Echo 19. Like the man said, I paid.
United 1011 Heavy, taxi to E19er via November Papa, November Bravo, Sierra Foxtrot, Romeo Bravo. Good day.
The time is 2:05 p.m. The weather here is warm at 28 degrees Celsius, with a few clouds and no precipitation. Please remain seated until...
United 1011 Heavy will taxi to Echo 19 via November Papa, November Bravo, Sierra Foxtrot, Romeo Bravo. Thank you.
Marie and Jacques,
I have
thank
no
you for flying with United
I have no idea
Air.
where this is.
Did you know that Houston is home to the famous Space Center Houston? We hope you enjoy your stay or safe
United
travels to
1011
your
Heavy,
next destination.
taxi to Echo 19er via November Papa, November Bravo, Sierra Foxtrot, Romeo Bravo. You're welcome.
Okay, what is that? November Papa, that's one more on the left. Then Sierra Fox. Then Romeo Bravo, which is this. So yeah, basically logical, except I want to go down to November Papa, which is off straight ahead one more. Yeah, this is easier to VR. Sorry, guys. I think it's this one. Not very good signage. It's a lot easier when you can look out the window, which I can't easily. I'll start the EPU. I think St. Intentions did those birds because I don't have any bird add-ins. There's E terminal. And Romeo Alpha. 19 is that straight in right there. Right there. Brake set. Shut down. Well, I hope you found that interesting. Showed you how to use CPDLC. That was the intention. How it works on a longer flight. And I hope you learned something.